Welcome to the German Climate Pavilion at COP29 in Baku. Germany. Climate solutions, fast and fair.
Good morning, everybody. Hello from Baku. How are you doing? Welcome in the German Climate Pavilion. And ladies and gentlemen, a very, very, very early good morning to you joining us in our live stream from Germany, or maybe already for the afternoon tea when you're joining us further eastwards. Thank you for joining. Ladies and gentlemen, it's great to have you and to start into our day together. Today is the day here at COP, a themed day when it comes to urbanization, transport and tourism. And together in that first panel of the day, we will zoom in into the question how Hamburg businesses will work forward to a low-carbon future, how business alliances like the Hamburg Chamber of Commerce are increasingly importantly engaged in that topic, and of course how they are relevant and pivotal in driving actions and investments forward when it comes to decarbonization. In every corner at this COP, the question is where will be the investments coming from? The money for decarbonization? Where is the encouragement for decarbonization? Who are the driving actors? So this will be also important for our panel later on. So please feel free to also join your thoughts and your comments by using the hashtag Handel fürs Klima, hashtag Hamburg 2040 and hashtag ICC. And of course, you know, make it a little bit viral and tag the Handelskammer Hamburg and the ICC Germany for that as well in your postings. We will read, of course, all of your panels. So let's dive into the question how also Hamburg will be engaged into climate neutrality by 2040. And for that, I welcome Dr. Malte Heyne here on stage. He is the CEO of the Hamburg Chamber of Commerce. The stage is yours.
Well, thank you. And ladies and gentlemen, here at the German Climate Pavilion at COP29, and to all of you joining us online, welcome and good morning. I'm really happy to have the opportunity to present to you our efforts in achieving net zero by 2040 with the Hamburg business community. The Hamburg Chamber of Commerce is the oldest chamber in Germany, representing 180,000 member companies from any sector of the business community. Hamburg is the second largest city in Germany and its economic powerhouse with a broad, diversified business structure. Today's panel on accelerating decarbonization, how Hamburg business community businesses are working toward a carbon neutral future, is about more than just representing Hamburg's 180,000 businesses. It's about taking real, urgent steps toward a future where economic success and climate protection go hand in hand. Right now, also in Germany, political discussions seem focused on extending deadlines for climate goals. This argument is often that fast action will cost too much or is too disruptive. And yes, as the Chamber, we agree to a certain extent, particularly as climate action is mainly conducted by governments with more regulation, sustainability reporting, and so on. This alone holds back companies from being productive. But the view on new regulation and the focus on costs misses a critical reality. Waiting raises long-term costs. The resources we need, like renewable energy capacities and sustainable infrastructure, will only become more costly as demand grows and climate impact worsens. Early action, on the other hand, is both environmentally responsible and financially smart. To put it simply, faster decarbonization opens doors to new business opportunities, creates jobs, and makes investments in green technologies more profitable. The quicker we act, the sooner we achieve these benefits. At the Hamburg Chamber of Commerce, we are committed to making our local economy climate neutral by 2040. We know that leading on climate strengthens our competitiveness. The belief that climate goals and economic growth are in conflict is outdated in our mind. In fact, they reinforce each other, creating a stronger, more resilient economy for all of us. This thinking brought us together with the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development and also ICC Germany and ICC worldwide. Given Hamburg's economic structure, the OECD saw our economy as a role model to demonstrate how faster decarbonization raises competitiveness. Our city, the second largest and the third largest economy of the world, is a globalized economy in a nutshell, and as such an ideal candidate to be investigated by a joint project between the Hamburg Chamber of Commerce and the OECD. Our work has shown how climate investment can drive economic success across Hamburg industries. Through case studies, the OECD findings are clear. Companies that integrate climate goals into their business models perform better. Those setting climate targets now will lead in the future, while those waiting will miss out. Many companies in Hamburg are not waiting for subsidies or laws to push them into action. In fact, more than half of our membership community is already pursuing ambitious climate goals. They are actively investing in clean technology and adapting their operations. And let me give you some specific examples of these efforts. Investing in new energy sources. Hamburg is developing terminals in our port, the largest port in Germany, to store green ammonia or methanol to support green hydrogen. Meanwhile, companies in the petroleum sector are moving toward synthetic fuels and renewable energy sources. In the port, the transport is very important, with nearly a third of harbor-related traffic still reliant on diesel. Companies are shifting to electric vehicles and charging infrastructures, especially for trucks. This will cut emissions and improve efficiency for businesses in that area. And northern Germany is the wind power potential is a significant advantage. Hamburg-based companies are joining forces to source green electricity from wind, allowing small and medium-sized businesses to benefit from lower costs while contributing to climate goals. And this is the wind energy is an aspect for really an economic development and to settle more down, attract more industrial manufacturing investments. Our message is come to where the power is in Germany to all companies around the world seeking green manufacturing in northern Germany and Hamburg. And we have also, we need to rethink manufacturing and recycling. Increasing the use of recycled materials and promoting circular economy practices boosts both efficiency and resilience. Hamburg, with a strong manufacturing sector, is well positioned to lead this transformation, and we are working on a platform to facilitate recycling partnerships among businesses. And ladies and gentlemen, why does Hamburg's approach matter globally? Hamburg's transformation demonstrates what's possible when a diverse economy, small and large businesses, traditional industries and new tech companies work together for climate change. Our port is the largest in Germany and it is being developed into a sustainable energy hub. As Germany's largest foreign trade hub and the central logistics point in Northern Europe, Hamburg's journey toward climate neutrality has ripple effects that extend far beyond our city limits. Hamburg's globalized economy includes the country's largest industrial area, with about 25% of employment and GDP coming from manufacturing. We also have a high concentration of energy-intensive firms across sectors. If our region, with its extensive industrial base, can thrive while moving to net zero emission, it proves that the green transition can be both practicable and profitable on a global scale. And other cities may follow, and we often quote Frank Sinatra in that regard, if you can make it there, you can make it anywhere. Our hope is so-called that Hamburg's example can inspire other cities and regions to see climate neutrality as achievable, economically rewarding, and essential for the future. And let me say this, as I'm representing the Hamburg business community, and we are the proverbial business like Hamburg merchant, we wouldn't mind to sell our solutions and technologies all over the world to other companies. And how does the Chamber of Commerce support decarbonization in the business community? We are convinced that achieving climate neutrality doesn't work with more regulation, subsidies, and reports. We are committed to supporting our business community and taking initiative now, capturing what we call first-mover advantages in emerging markets. By acting early, businesses can achieve higher and quicker returns on green investments, establishing themselves as leaders in their fields. Intermediaries like chambers can take concrete actions where government action fail. Chambers all over the world can play an important role in driving transformation, especially for SMEs. Please keep in mind that 90% of the German business community have less than 10 employees, and they are responsible for 50% of CO2 emissions, and we need to take care of that group of companies, which are all members in the chambers in Germany. This is why we have started initiatives to manage our business location to be more sustainable and then better off. Our so-called initiatives for the business location management aim to bundle resources and drive high-impact cooperative projects. These initiatives bring together key players to tackle specific challenges, such as electrifying the harbor traffic. Our port is a vital hub, yet almost a third of its traffic, again, is with diesel trucks. And it's very concrete investment is taking to establish the infrastructure for charging these trucks. And if we manage to reduce and shift this to electrical mobility, we will use 88.5% of the harbor traffic and related emissions, which is really a lot. So we are working on that. We also, the small and medium-sized companies, struggle with the cost of green electricity. And we are working on pooling the demand, and they can secure better pricing, making the transition to green energy more affordable and accelerating decarbonization across industries. The mentioned energy-intensive companies in Hamburg are exploring shared wind power initiatives. By pooling again their energy needs, these companies could achieve competitive pricing significantly below 10 cents per kilowatt hour and climate-neutral energy supplies, helping keep their operations sustainable and economically viable. A very important aspect for the industry now in Hamburg. Manufacturing accounts for roughly 3.5 million tons of Hamburg's annual CO2 emissions, accounting for approximately 25% of its total emissions to be reduced. In each of these areas, the Hamburg Chamber of Commerce acts as a bridge, bringing together businesses, government bodies, and technical experts to turn ideas into actions. And ladies and gentlemen, in Hamburg, we know that true progress requires cooperation across industries, regions, and institutions. That's the old idea of the Hanseatic League that we need to revive also when we address climate changes. The path to climate neutrality is complex, but we believe that with strong partnerships and innovative solutions, we can reach our goals faster and more effectively. Our message to government representatives is, please have more trust in companies and their innovative power. Please, instead of taking more regulations, take care of sustainable infrastructure and secure a green energy supply with competitive prices. It's the preconditions for our ambitions. When businesses, cities, and institutions join forces, we all come better off, both economically and environmentally. The Hamburg business community is on its path, and we invite everyone to join us. We don't want to wait for regulations or incentives. The time for action is now, and we are committed to leading the way. We want to embrace this opportunity to accelerate decarbonization together for a climate-neutral, livable, and economically thriving future. Thank you very much, and I'm looking forward to our further discussion with the representatives from Hamburg.
Thank you, Dr. Malte Heyne. Please join me here in our panel, and I also introduce our panelists in a second, so join me here on stage. Saskia Möller, Andrew Wilson, and Maximilian Webers, please come on stage. Thank you. Saskia will be seated here, you will be seated here. Andrew, may I ask you to have a seat here on the right-hand side? Wonderful. Thank you so much for making time in your busy calendars, as the COP is always a very busy time here. Dr. Malte Heyne will be joining our panel. You know him already, CEO of Hamburg Chamber of Commerce. Next to me on the left-hand side is Saskia Möller. She is the Director, Legal, Compliance and Sustainability at the family-owned travel retail company Gebr Heinemann. And among many responsibilities, but her responsibilities include anti-corruption, data privacy, antitrust, sanctions, product compliance and corporate law, as well as sustainability. And it's lovely to have you bring in the family-owned perspective, family-owned company perspective here into our panel. We do have Andrew Wilson with us. He is the Deputy Secretary General at the Policy at the International Chamber of Commerce, short ICC. And in this role, you are overseeing ICC's engagement on a range of public policy issues, organizational, external communication activities, but also, of course, bring in the supranational institution for the global perspective here onto our panel. Andrew, thank you for joining our panel. And last but not least, Maximilian Webers is also here on our panel. You are the co-founder and the CEO of COLIPI, a Hamburg-based biotech and climate tech startup, and his work at COLIPI focuses on transforming carbon dioxide into sustainability hydrocarbon molecules. And we have to dive into that because in the end it becomes climate oil, an eco-friendly alternative to traditional vegetable oil, as I understood it correctly. But nevertheless, you are really driving forward a journey to a carbon neutral future. Bring in the perspective of a startup that is driving sustainability forward. Thank you for joining. Yes, we do have microphones here on the panel, so get ready because we'd like to dive into now how Hamburg's overarching vision for decarbonizing and competitiveness when it comes to business and business making, what drives them forward, what is the role also of the Chamber here in supporting this transition, and how our business is struggling and driving forward into the transition phases when it comes to decarbonization. But I'd like to start with you because climate oil, we first need to understand what that means and what that is. Maximilian, can you quickly explain to us what's the definition of climate oil and why does it make it so special and decarbonized in its emissions?
Yeah, thank you for this question. Climate oil is a word that we are defining as a company. Climate oil is an alternative to traditional vegetable oils such as palm oil, but also soybean oil or rapeseed oil. And we produce it based on carbon dioxide. So we are a modern oil brewery. Like a brewery, there are cells that produce alcohol or beer, for example. But our cells learn to eat CO2, so eat something bad and produce something good. And the best and biggest value proposition of climate oil, the word says it already, is its almost carbon neutral CO2 footprint. So all the companies that seek to reduce, especially scope 3 emissions, need carbon neutral raw materials such as our oil, cosmetics, food, feed, lubricants, biodiesel, sustainable aviation fuel, etc.
Okay, wonderful. So we understood it a little bit better than my definition. Thank you for clarifying, Maximilian. Yes, let's set the context and let's set and go into the vision for decarbonization and, of course, the competitive advantages that will arise out of that. Saskia, of course, Gebr Heinemann, family-owned company, nevertheless, also, of course, the journey towards carbon neutrality. What benefits do you hope to gain out of that journey, and what benefits does the company gain to get out of that, long muscle-intense journey when it comes to decarbonization, when it comes to carbon neutrality?
think first and foremost, companies who won't have a strategy towards that will fail. So that is an imperative for me. And of course, we want to improve our whole value chain in terms of carbon reduction. And as Maximilian just mentioned, Scope 3 is a major challenge for us. Nevertheless, we work towards Scope 1 and 2 as well. You said that we are a family-owned company, just had our 145th anniversary this year, and we are kind of innovative by tradition, and that is what brought us to this now 5th generation. And of course, we want to extend that by being sustainable in our transportation, but also operations.
Thank you for that first impression. Malte, listening to the speech, already there are a lot of keywords and of course the big vision towards 2040, but nevertheless Hamburg views from your speech that decarbonization is really a competitiveness advantage, an advantage for business owners. Is that, or has that already arrived in every boardroom in Hamburg?
I think it has arrived in many, many boardrooms, and it's a growing number of boardrooms because you know the boardrooms are seeing in the future, and they see how CO2 prices will develop and will rise. So it's pretty clear that that if you invest now in climate neutral processes and production, that you will be better off in the future because you save them this amount of money. It's a challenge. Yeah? It's not easy in the current circumstances in Germany to invest now and to take this investment, but it's necessary. And the earlier you provide this investment and you do this and you're on the way, the better you're off in the future. This is the main message, which is very widespread in Hamburg. Huh?
Andrew, let's zoom out of Hamburg and let's go, to the globe, to the global map. Of course, Hamburg as a front runner, and we need these front runners from a business perspective. But is Hamburg a front runner when it comes to bringing the businesses into the journey for decarbonization? And of course, from an international perspective.
I certainly feel an awful amount of pressure to provide this global perspective and the specific question on Hamburg. I think without doubt, and what you said, Malte, at the start, is an incredibly impressive journey on which the city and also the local business community, assisted by the Chamber, is going on. And make no doubt, we obviously operate at a global level, but ultimately we recognize the importance of action at the local level. That's, I think, in some ways the most important aspect of implementing the Paris Agreement. Global discussions are fine, but the local environment is where the rubber hits the road. And I think we really do see a very vital role for cities. I think they're responsible for something like 70% of global emissions, according to estimates from the UN and other specialist agencies. And I just also wanted to say one thing. In addition to decarbonization, we really do think the role of cities is vital in terms of building resilience to a changing climate. On the first day of this conference, we published new research showing that over the past decade, extreme weather events have cost the global economy $2 trillion, impacting 1.6 billion people. The vast majority of those numbers are actually in urban environments. So the ability of cities to build in resilience into infrastructure, energy systems, mobility is absolutely vital, and I think we need to place a greater emphasis on that.
But decarbonizing the economies, who needs to push forward more? The cities, because they are also threatened within the urban areas? Or do you see also a big responsibility when it comes to the Chamber of Commerce? Because they both need to go hand in hand, but sometimes the visions, they're not aligned.
So I'll give you a personal view on this. I think business organizations, chambers of commerce, and in fact individual companies have a very, very important role to play in terms of enabling partnerships, which are often essential, collaboration, and actually showing what is possible. And I think the support part is particularly important for SMEs. We have data from our network which shows very, very clearly that many SMEs just simply don't know where to start. They want to take action, but they don't know what metrics to use, what tools are available. So I think that is key. But I don't think action from the private sector, including the chambers, should be seen as a replacement for stable public policies. And I think the lesson from the past 10 years of the climate agreement and the SDGs more broadly is business initiatives, voluntary initiatives can take us so far, but actually if you want systemic change, you also need the enabling policy environment.
Thank you. Maximilian, let's zoom into COLIPI. So how easy was it to found COLIPI in Hamburg, and how easy is it nowadays still to combine this competitiveness by also driving forward for climate action and by decarbonizing?
Okay, I'm going to answer the first question first. The ease of incorporating a company in Hamburg, it's been a great experience for several reasons. Now, there is clusters that formed around the universities, helping scientists and PhD students eventually to incorporate a company, giving us tools such as how to make a business plan, how to raise funding, trainings, even free space in rooms. There's something called Startup Dock or Port, where we get free or very, very affordable offices. So the environment is great. Also, the funding environment is improving. Now there is the Bank of Hamburg having a program called InnoStarter, and they invest into startups, equity investment, but also having non-dilutive funding. Now the second question, how we combine sustainability to our competitiveness. Sustainability, and especially the laws and regulations enforcing it, is core to our success. Now, our climate oil is chemically seen just like vegetable oil, like palm oil. So companies could say, why should we use COLIPI's climate oil? We can use palm oil or crude oil for the next decades to come. Well, if we had a regulation in place like globally binding CO2 price of $100 to $200 per metric ton, then our alternative process will be comparably more affordable than fossil oil and vegetable oil-based products, because their production costs will increase. So, in Malte, in your opening speech, you said we need less regulations. I do agree, but I'm asking for one more. We need a globally binding CO2 price of $100 to $200 per ton of CO2, and this will help startups like ours to thrive. Because then it's market mechanisms, and our oil will find adoption around the world. So it's crucial.
You mentioned first movers, they should get more advantages when it comes also to regulation. Can you dive into that a little bit more, because you have a clear wish here now as well, and we need to hold more front runners when it comes to champions of decarbonization here in Germany. Again, what can the chambers also do to fight to keep more and more front runners here in Germany or in Hamburg especially?
Yeah, I think the business case is really pretty clear. If you see your production costs rise with your CO2 emissions, and you need to substitute with new technologies, that is pretty clear. So anyone knows about that. But it's you need to be initially on the way to substitute this. And what we can do as a chamber is in many ways to support our communities. We need to inspire them and to deliver best practice examples. We need to inform about opportunities from other places all over the world, like the exchange on the ICC World Chamber Federation Network is great, because you learn from many countries in the world how you can inspire your business community. That's the first way. But you also need to lobby for, as Max said, a sound environment for new technologies, for innovation, to ease company establishing and new startups, new technologies to settle down in your business location like in Hamburg. And you need to lobby for a good framework, and that's what we do a lot in Germany. We are talking to our authorities to say, all right, we need following infrastructure. Have a look on our port. We developed this from a container hub, and we have container handling, but we also need to develop the sustainable energy hub to get the green hydrogen from all over the world, where it's cheaper to produce that hydrogen, to bring it to the Hamburg port, and establishing the pipeline infrastructure to our member companies, the manufacturing companies, all located in the port, because they know that. And this is also, from a city's perspective, very interesting, because if you know, we produce and import green and energy with competitive prices, manufacturing industry will follow, will start to invest, and will start to settle down. And this generates lots of revenues, tax revenues again. So this is an interesting future for Hamburg as a city.
Thank you. Saskia, let's zoom into, again, to Gebrüder Heinemann. Can you zoom in with us and tell us what is a strategy that you are bringing forward, something that is also, when it comes to a specific strategy, a specific mechanism that your company has implemented in reducing carbon emissions, and of course, not just naming the mechanism, but also the effects that it had in life.
In general, we have a holistic strategy towards ESG+, we call it, because I think key is that we have every dimension of it, and being a retailer and being in the midst of the value stream, we said there must be a fourth dimension, the so-called responsible value chain, under which roof we combine all those topics. So, for example, what we did 2 years ago is host a summit within our logistics center in Hamburg and invite all third-party providers for a summit on Scope 3 emissions reduction, and to come into partnership together with startups, together with providers of HVO, which at that time was not 100% allowed in Germany, which now is, and makes things easier, and also the transportation companies. And out of that we developed certain milestone plans, and also gave them a long-term perspective in terms of having reliability. If they invest in that kind of technology, we have long-running contracts with them now to close that gap, and also cost-sharing models with suppliers, with B2B customers, where we can extend the value chain or improve it in that sense, that we say, okay, of course, at the moment the technology is a little bit more expensive, but if we bring it into a new normal, we will reach it together, and that is that key what we use. And of course, for our retail distribution outlets, where we switch to green electricity and to district heat where possible, which is kind of a normal for us as well.
Bring it into a new normal. That is easier said than done, I assume, right? And in designing the whole process, also in multi-stakeholder processes, what gave you the biggest headache on that journey?
Well,
because in the end it must be a business case as well.
It
right?
must be a business case, and that is always the idea behind it. So people, planet, and profit. We are a economically operating house, of course, but to start somewhere, to find that key point where we have a mutual starting point from. And it doesn't have to be perfect, but we are working a lot in partnerships, and we kind of benefit from the global view we have, because there's a lot of movement in the Nordics, and we see what kind of regulations comes out from there, and we enabled it in other markets as well. But of course it is a challenge to, for example, bring that to the Middle East and explain, well, that is kind of the scene there, can we implement it here? But we try to convince our stakeholders to make that step together to come farther here, but like you said, it is easier said than done.
Absolutely, Max. I'd like to bring in the Hamburg perspective here as well before we join the international perspective again. Talking about challenges and headaches, is there a current headache now you know, you know, here in Baku, but I think a lot of headaches maybe or to-dos are waiting on your desk. So what is currently in these turbulent times, politically speaking, but also, of course, when it comes to regulation, when it comes to policies, what is something that you need to tackle? You mentioned one thing, but are there any others that is driving you forward?
Yes, as a startup developing hardware-based technology, our headaches at current stage may be a little bit different from most businesses present here. So I do not care yet much for cost of employment or energy cost yet, because we're public funded, we're investor funded, and we plan to burn money, a lot more money than we earn for the next 5 to 10 years. So we...
Is that planned, yeah?
Huh?
That burning the money, that's planned?
Absolutely, yeah.
Oh, wow, okay.
But we make more money than expected already. So last year already we had 250,000 euro in revenue, was by surprise. And but long story short, we need to create patents. Our biggest challenge is more on the R&D, technology readiness, scaling challenge. Once we reached industrial scale, a technical readiness level of, say, 9 or beyond, okay? Then we will arrive at a stage where we can really make impact, either by selling climate oil in the million-ton scale or by licensing our carbon utilization technology to CO2 point sources, such as oil and gas companies or municipal waste combustion centers. So for us, it's scaling technology, raising funding, because as long as we are not, commercial yet, or we didn't break even, we're highly dependent on funding. And this is a 2 years terms, and every 2 years we need to sell a stake of the company, get in, and have new investors on board. And when there are situations, global macroeconomic situations, like raising interest rates from the central banks, all of a sudden startups are not risky startups are not an interesting investment anymore in the portfolio. You rather go to bonds or to other investments, and we cannot influence the central bank yet. So this technology and funding, this is the major risks for the next 5 to 10 years, and then afterwards it's typical probably regulations to energy costs, etc., and regulations, but not yet.
Before we have the international look onto that as well, again with Andrew and Malte, just quickly, how is Hamburg then supporting in that regard? Hamburg businesses, Hamburg front runners, again, when it comes to these headaches that we mentioned. Because in the end, of course, again, it comes back to the question how Germany stays strong in that innovation space and in that ecosystem. So creating that innovative ecosystem of new ideas, of new businesses. Again, Malte, how is the Chamber supporting?
The ways in Hamburg are very close. It's very easy to connect with the business community, with authorities, with intermediaries like the Chamber, and there's lots of networking to be conducted with the Chamber. And we bring in touch startups like COLIPI with the business community, with corporates. And this is there's a saying in Germany: if you in the startup community, if you want to run a startup, go to Berlin or anywhere else. But if you want to make money with it, go to Hamburg, because we have such a sound business community, and this is what we try to develop and make this experience available to our startups.
Have you ever got a call from Silicon Valley as a competitor as well? Just a random question here. If Berlin's not calling.
I've been spending 3 weeks this year in May and June in San Jose, San Francisco, just to get an idea.
To get funding?
Yes, also, but I happily return to Hamburg because this is my home, and this is COLIPI's home.
So it works. It works well. Thank you. Andrew, let's bring in again the international perspective, because when it comes to these global crises, of course, always the buzzwords, we need to work together. It needs to come together for cross-sectoral thinking and cross-collaborations among industries. It's not easier, it's easier said than done, but again, how is, of course, the ICC then supporting in these cross-sectoral challenges and also in these cross-sectoral headaches?
Thank you, Katie. That's a very big question. So I think when we look at many of the issues or many of the challenges companies across our network are facing, there's often a very important international trade dimension. So to get scale on certain climate solutions, you need to be able to operate across borders, and that's particularly true of circular solutions, for instance, e-waste, also in a number of other sectors. We hear very clearly from companies across our membership base that actually trying to do it within national borders is just not a viable economic option. And the challenge there is when companies try to internationalize circular solutions or sustainability solutions, they often run up against a whole range of legacy regulations which are predicated on an old economic model. So actually getting this kind of cross-border environment right, we think is absolutely vital and pivotal. The other thing that's quite interesting, just as another brief reference point, is we recently ran a survey of our global chambers network. It's the first time in a long time we've done that. And we asked them a number of questions about climate change. And one was, where do you see the barriers? One of the key issues was around access to cost-effective finance, unsurprisingly. And that held true across developed and developing economies. But the other issue was access to technology and a complex international trade environment, particularly the imposition of tariffs on clean energy products or other green technologies. So I think the international dimension is absolutely key. And I think we need to keep in mind the importance of trade in delivering climate solutions and sustainability solutions at real scale.
But looking into these political times that we are facing, especially when we look towards the United States of America and also the European developments, but also, worldwide, these tensions when it comes to trade, when it comes to collaboration, when it comes to be open for exchange and to collaborate. How do you actually look into that future in these politically different ecosystems than 10 years ago when it comes to collaboration, when it comes to exchange of cross-sectoral cooperation? I know it's a $1 trillion question, but we do have a lot of $1 trillion questions here on that COP, on that finance COP. But I think it's crucial to dig into that as well. What would be your wish and, of course, your priority that you see?
So the last time I spoke about the outlook for the global trading system, I was told by a number of people in the audience that I was so pessimistic I'd made people feel almost suicidal. So I will try to be a little bit more optimistic on this occasion. I think we are in an incredibly dangerous time in terms of international cooperation and trade in particular. I think it's important we don't overreact to recent political developments, particularly in the US. I think pragmatism must prevail. Regardless of the direction of the future US administration on climate or towards this process, towards the UNFCCC, we hear a very, very clear commitment from the US business community pretty much across the board towards ambitious climate action. So I think regardless of federal policy and regardless of what may happen at state level in some states, in the real economy, I think there will be no change in terms of what we see from US business. But I think as well, it really is incumbent on other governments outside the US to do all they can to retain an open trading system, which is absolutely vital. And I think part of that is how governments, particularly the European Union, respond to, let's say, the imposition of tariffs or notification of future tariffs by the incoming US administration. And I think pragmatism needs to be the watchword there. But I think as well the European Union also needs to do all it can to foster a trading environment which is conducive to climate action and the diffusion of technology and solutions, but is also conducive to fostering a collaborative environment in this arena. And policy measures like CBAM have caused enormous friction amongst developing and emerging economies. There are genuine concerns about the implications for the trade performance of those economies, very understandably so. And we think there needs to be an international effort to deal with some of the spillover effects of those policies, particularly the carbon border adjustment mechanism.
Thank you for that outlook. And yeah, would you like to react on that directly, and then I come back to you?
I would like to make just a short appendix to that, because I absolutely agree to Andrew. And we need free trade and we need open markets. Also, we want to address the challenge of climate change. But the fear of tariffs and trade conflicts between countries, especially Europe and the US now, there's some sort of insecureness, which is not good. But we need to be honest to ourselves, it's not new. We are in Germany and Europe, we didn't want to establish and sign the TTIP agreement with the US, for example. If we had this now, then we wouldn't have the fear of any tariffs with the US, because we had a free trade agreement. So that's what we need to think newly about that, to establish more free trade agreements all over the world, maybe with India, maybe with the Mercosur now, which is very close now. We need to go for that, because it's a very crucial point in international trade.
So what's holding us back? You're in favor? I do see a lot of positive smiles here.
Protectionism is anywhere. If you have a look at Mercosur, the French farmers are also opposing that, because they're afraid of that. There are lots of similar, when it came to TTIP, the biggest fear, the so-called fear in Germany, was the chlorine chicken being imported from the US, which is really not our problem. So we need to be honest, we need to define our interest, and also, if we have specific minor interests in our economies in Europe, we need to explain it and say, all right, for the bigger picture, we need the free trade agreement.
I think that is leading us towards a completely different conversation here as well. Again, another topic. I mean, there are so many topics here on that COP, but nevertheless, thanks for this outline, because this perspective is important, also crucial to name it in our conversation. Saskia, I'd like to come from that international sphere back, of course, to Gebr Heinemann when it comes to collaboration. That's beautiful, because wherever you go in every airport, you see the big signs and letters of Heinemann. So collaboration, bringing together.
The best Hamburg marketing we can have.
Cooperation, where so many people come together. I think that is definitely in the DNA of the company of Heinemann. So again, this question, collaboration in decarbonizing the economy, in decarbonizing businesses, value chains. How do you live that keyword with life, and how do you feel that with life when it comes to collaboration, working together? Not just, of course, in the airports where you bring together the customers.
I think in every field, like you said, it's in the DNA. Partnership is key, and bringing that along the pathway for sustainability is just a continuation of it. So what we foster is to work in collaborations with our suppliers and also with our distribution partners. So we have sustainability, so-called joint green business plans, together with our key suppliers and first movers in the industry, in cosmetics, in confectionery, in spirits, and also in fashion accessoires, to move together with them. And in these business plans are ideas to reduce emissions, to change the packaging, the ingredients of the cosmetics, for example, but also to make a social cause. And we have that also with airports or with ferry companies we work with, and really try to make use to make this holistic view make things forward, because that helps a lot. And kind of every action is beautiful in it, because we get so many different views. So, for example, with one Nordic ferry company, we are in exchange with, there are things which are just normal to them in the Nordics, and we can bring it to other markets, for example, or also bring that into partnerships with the big brands and say, hey, we see that this is not only a trend, but this is coming, of course, towards Western Europe maybe first, but this will also emerge into other markets.
But isn't it a bit contradictory, because you are actually working in an ecosystem of travel business where people travel and go by airplane or by big cruise ship. You know, how do you bring in a nudge then your customers to stand up for sustainability and of course for their journey of decarbonizing?
So first of all, you could say, or you could question whether we as a travel retailer need a strategic idea behind sustainability. But I think it's imperative, because we want to travel to change all the travel environment. Also, when it comes to aviation fuel, we are also in contact with stakeholders who foster this. And also, I think, and we could see it really after or during the COVID crisis. So travel brings people together. It fosters collaboration. It helps to get an understanding of different cultures, and it helps for tolerance so much. And therefore, I think this is key. And bringing people together and then also showing them new developments in sustainability is the showcasing we can do. And therefore, just during crisis, when we reworked our value proposition and also the sustainable impact of Heinemann, we said we need something to educate. And I think, Andrew, you said there's of course a whole lot to learn, but we want to try that also in our stores, and therefore we launched the first sustainable product portfolio called Future Friendly. And the markets gained a lot of knowledge out of this last 2 years, and we'll launch this anew in January in most of our stores, where we, for example, foster B Corp certification, explain about why a certain bottle, for example, is lighter and therefore better for the environment and things like that. So of course our key suppliers here play a major role, and they can extend also their proposition of sustainable products within our stores.
Max, talking about collaboration, you already mentioned, of course, quite some few things. But again, when it comes to carbon neutral Hamburg, looking into the bigger city picture again, what is your vision, you know, when it comes to the Hamburg ecosystem and, of course, the ecosystem of your company, being the founder? What are then the next steps when you look ahead?
Thank you for this question, Katie. COLIPI in Hamburg. Our vision is that our headquarters and the centerpiece, the core of our R&D divisions, will always stay in Hamburg. Also,
you got a thumbs up here. Have you seen that?
You remember the chamber, right?
Exactly. Yeah. Also, Hamburg, as Malte mentioned earlier, is core of the hydrogen strategy of the Federal Republic of Germany. And what has not been mentioned so earlier is that there will also be CO2 management infrastructure in Europe. This means that CO2 will be piped from CO2 sources through whole Europe to be sequestrated or pumped into the North Sea ground. And one of the biggest CO2 pipelines will go through Hamburg. Now, what I didn't mention earlier is that climate oil has two components it consists of. We capture CO2 and transform it to this oil, but we need hydrogen. So again, Hamburg, as one of the core logistic hubs for hydrogen and CO2, will be very interesting also for production at large scale, if there will be serious public and private funding, because the production site is CapEx heavy and can well go into the hundreds of millions. Just to have a picture, when you know BASF, a big German chemical company, and you know Ludwigshafen, this is a scale that we have to accept and go through. Now this is the vision for COLIPI in Hamburg. The COLIPI inert vision is that we are going to be the world's largest supplier of climate oil based on a biotechnological process. So data, and we have evidence from the laboratory that our process is the fastest and the most affordable biotech process to produce oils from CO2. And when something is affordable, it will be adopted by the market. There will be demand, and hence, on the long run, we may have a competitive edge and become a million-ton supplier. Now, I hope I could ask your question.
Absolutely,
or answer your question. Now, maybe on collaboration, a word on collaboration, international one or not? Yeah.
What is driving you forward? Are you working together with several stakeholders? And of course, how do you live collaboration in that regard?
So, international collaboration and free trade is...
It's not becoming easier in these times.
It's not. I think it's just a phase, because after 4 years or 5 years, everyone will realize that that some import tax or anything will increase the cost of life. I mean, the customers will suffer. I mean, I want to have an electric car. I don't really care if it's built in where it's built, as long as it's sustainable and affordable. And so the price will be paid by the customers and by the citizens. And then after 5 years or 10 years, the governments will realize, we had this 1850 or we had it in 1900. We have it all the time again. And now look, we have the economics books. We open them and we read. Free trade will benefit all. It's not a null-sum game. So we should stop import tax and stuff like that. And we think international. I had the same words in interviews earlier. Global climate crisis is a global crisis. It doesn't stop at borders. So if the ice is melting, Amsterdam is having a problem, as well as Hamburg and Jakarta and Bangkok and all the cities around the world that are close to the coast. So we need to think global. And we are also already building a global team. So we have Indian colleagues, we have French colleagues. I had an intern from Singapore. Europe is an aging population. We have a lack of...
So what are the new markets then you're hoping for to go into?
Right now we're nationalizing our patents in China, Japan, Brazil, United States, and Europe. So the markets, we are always looking for CO2 sources. So we go where there's most CO2. And this is the big economics in the world, also India. And we're looking for big oil markets, and this is many times the same markets that have a lot of CO2 nowadays too. So we need to grow international.
Yeah. Malte, looking back to Hamburg, Hamburg also hosted the Hamburg Sustainability Conference. So sustainability is all over the place. You've got these front runners that we're having here on the panel, but of course many, many more in the chamber. You know, making it a business case to decarbonize economies and businesses, what happened in Hamburg that other cities can learn from, that the chamber and the city council decided, yes, let's do it? Or that the chamber decided, okay, we go forward and the city council is coming after us?
You know, let me make an important point. Sustainability, from a business perspective, is also about profitability. Because as a company, if you are not profitable, you will not be sustainable, because you will be out of the market. So we see sustainability from a business perspective, and it's pretty clear when it comes up to climate neutrality. If you save and reduce energy costs, you'll be more profitable. So we have really the merchant's perspective on that. And Hamburg, we have a very close cooperation with the city's government. You know, the city hall and the chamber are one building, and it's very connected, which is a symbol of our close cooperation. And that's why we have direct access to government representatives and good collaboration and establishing so-called challenges that we have with the business perspective, which is, I think, one of the key success factors in Hamburg.
So what can other city councils learn from that cooperation?
You know, what we keep claiming towards the government is, please take care of the framework, take care of competitive and green energy prices, and please provide good infrastructure and leave the rest to us, and we take care of this business perspective. This is something, this message is what we would like to provide to other chambers, to other cities, to say business community should be active, addressing the challenges and talking to the governments, providing the framework, but being active on providing solutions, developing is. International exchange is crucial to learn from each other. This is why it's so important to have institutions like ICC, and so this is our main message.
Thank you. Andrew, talking a little bit about our environment here in Baku, COP29, Finance COP, mobilize investments for climate action. Everybody is looking for the trillions that we still need. We're still waiting what comes out of the negotiations. It's often said, we need to leverage private capital, we need to leverage more business capital. You probably are invited on several stages and panels. What is your experience here now from the outcomes and from the possible outcomes of COP? You know, what is a good signal? What is rather a signal where you have a big question mark on it? When it comes to the big question, of course, driving forward together in collaboration for climate action and decarbonization.
Wow, you've really given me the big questions to answer.
You're not here for the easy questions, Andrew.
Look, I think this COP, I know in the media it's been described by some commentators as a transitional COP, a bridge to the big glitzy event next year in Brazil. And I kind of understand that characterization. But I think if you look at the substance, what's on the negotiating table here in terms of the new global climate finance goal is absolutely pivotal in implementing the Paris Agreement, and particularly in terms of making good on the commitments that were made last year in Dubai. Without finance, none of this happens, whether it's mitigation or adaptation. And I think we need to recognize that we are way, way short, particularly from a developing economy perspective, of the levels of finance needed to keep the world within a 1.5 degree emissions temperature trajectory. So we've been very clear that we need to see a very strong, very ambitious climate finance goal with a very strong public finance commitment at its center, which means more grant and concessional financing from advanced emerging economies. Basically, anyone who has the financial resources to provide that finance should be able to do so. But I think we also need to look, and this is what we've been very clear on with governments over the past 2 weeks and before this COP, we also need to look at how the new climate finance goal, the NCQG, can help mobilize private finance. And there we still see too many barriers to investment by the private sector in climate solutions, particularly in the developing world. And part of that is development banks, the World Bank, regional development banks, essentially acting as quasi-market participants in the infrastructure and clean energy space, rather than being catalysts of private capital by doing equity investments or providing early stage grants. There's a critical path issue on financial regulation. The financial regulatory system, macroprudential, that we have today in the world was built in response to the global financial crisis. I think it's highly questionable as to whether it's fit for purpose for dealing with the climate the climate crisis. Can we actually look at how that could be recalibrated to allow banks and investors to pour money into clean energy in developing economies? We're not quite clear what the outcome is going to be of this COP, but I think if governments fail to deliver something that is both meaningful, ambitious, and holistic, it will be a severe blow to the pace of action in the real economy, and I think it will ultimately undermine the progress we can expect to see in future years through this process.
How do you face that more and more expectation in terms of responsibilities come toward the business sector from government side? Because the public funds, they will be shorter than 10 years ago, than 5 years ago. So there is this request of mobilizing more funds from the business sector, from private investment. So how do you face these expectations coming towards the business sector?
I think it comes back to what I said earlier. Government shouldn't expect business to act as a charity. It shouldn't force businesses to do things that are not commercially viable. And I think on that basis, if there is an emphasis on private capital, which is absolutely right and proper, and I don't think anyone debates that, it's a simple reality. We need private climate finance if we are going to implement the Paris Agreement. There's no doubt about that. But then governments have got to get serious about creating the right enabling environments. How do you enable finance to flow? How do you bridge problems where investments may not be commercially attractive? And if you look in the OECD, 80% of investment in renewable energy comes from private sources. And I think the research now shows that most of that is self-sustaining. You then look at the developing world, and private finance is a tiny, tiny proportion, and there are huge and growing investment gaps in many economies. So I think governments need to look seriously, both at a national level but also internationally, how do you create ecosystems that actually support and enable the private sector, and also get rid of some of the clear blockages we see. And just to come back to the point on macroprudential regulation, Basel III today sends a clear signal to banks that investments in new technologies are risky, therefore should be avoided. It sends a very clear signal that investments in developing economies and least developed economies are risky and therefore should be avoided. That is fine from a financial stability perspective, if you look at it in a silo, but actually how do we find ways of adjusting the capital weighting so banks are able and incentivized to make those essential investments? So without that enabling environment, I don't think we can expect to see the private sector step up to the level governments are hoping and expecting, and to the level we all need.
Malte, mobilizing more private, more in terms of decarbonizing when it comes to, to mobilizing the private sector. What is again a learning from Hamburg maybe in mobilizing more and more business owners to go towards that journey of decarbonizing towards climate action?
Again, it's a question of bringing companies together. So let me give you an example. Just yesterday, we organized in our chamber a B2B conference, and like a fair, we had 50 exhibitors providing solutions how to achieve climate neutrality in your business, from measuring your impact, setting out the goals, substituting processes, and so on. The whole chain and achieving that. We had about roughly 1,000 small and medium-sized companies in our chamber and looking for the solutions. So bringing this together and providing opportunities to invest, I think it's a crucial point. And this is an important role also, which our message to the world is for policymakers. Talk to your local chamber and bring them together to make this matchmaking between efficient solutions and the demand of the business community. Bring it together, organize matchmaking conference like this, because then you will get this business community in action, and this is what it's all about.
Smart design and conference designing, lovely. That is a very important topic when it bringing in the right people together. Saskia, let's zoom in again to Heinemann. When we are looking into the journey of your company, of Gebr Heinemann's company, when it comes to sustainability and decarbonization, what is a project that lies ahead? What can you share with us? Is there anything in the pipeline that comes out in the near future, or something that you're working on, of course, that you can talk about behind the scenes, that is something and crucial also for the sustainable DNA of Gebr Heinemann?
So for a long time we operated with logistics hubs in Germany solely, and as of 2021, I think we started with a regional hub in Oslo, Norway, and we will set up a similar one within Turkey to really work with decentralized solutions. And that is also coming forward the idea, where possible, to start with different delivery points, going to a multimodal transportation, and make the delivery shorter in total, and therefore also reduce emissions. Of course, technology helps, but also bringing the products nearer to the customer helps as well.
How did the work towards sustainability and decarbonization has changed? Because as a family-owned company in the 5th generation, there were, of course, different definitions of sustainability when it comes to implementing sustainability. How did it change, during that journey, during these editions of different ownerships, to be now there where you are? What would be a learning, looking back into a little bit of the company's history when it comes to bringing action into the sustainable journey?
So I think, again, education is very helpful and needed because you have to explain it and simplify a lot so everybody is on top of things. We personally do exchange, of course, also with other industry, but what we also used as a model is to have our own sustainability academy to bring the key decision makers in a position that they can also consider a sustainable impact from their point of view. So it's of course nice to have a sustainability department and to have a strategy, but that is more or less a must-have hygienic factor. But if our sales colleagues or purchasing colleagues, even finance colleagues know what to do in that exact position, for example, think about the banks, you just mentioned that as well, Max. That is key now in most of the contracts with them as well, and KPIs for them are also developed. Or if we think about the reporting, although this is a headache, we can make that also an advantage for us, and hopefully also a competitive advantage, because we're in a position to have that exact KPI and derive another measure from it. So therefore, I like to spread the message through all the industry, through all the company, to make everyone not only aware, but bring into a position where they can act as well. And I think that is key, and that has changed because the idea, maybe before when we were smaller, that was more into the DNA, and they acted natural like that. Being a bigger corporation and growing also means to not shifting it to one department, but to have an overall not silo thinking idea of it.
Thank you. Wonderful. And with that, I would love to close that panel. Thank you so much. Saskia Möller, Maximilian Webers, Andrew Wilson, and Dr. Malte Heyne. This is your round of applause. Thanks for zooming in. And for being an ambassador for Hamburg, Max, right? As I assume, for bringing the international perspective, for, of course, bringing the COP29 perspective in, but also, of course, for zooming in into the call to action. Thank you, everybody, for listening and for coming by, for stepping by. I think the coffee bar is open again. Ali, our very active barista, keeps you going with wonderful caffeine. And yes, I'll see you soon again. Thank you for listening.
Okay, perfect. Let's. Okay. Know how many pictures she made, eh?